Hey guys, welcome to Fodder Friday. I can't believe it's Friday already. Actually, I'm recording this not on Friday, so it isn't actually Friday, but I can't believe that I'm recording Fodder Friday. Full disclosure, Ivy, my little dog, is in the room with me, so if she starts getting chattery, meaning barking at anything that moves outside, then I'll pause you guys and place her out of the room. I did give her a talking to prior to hitting the record button, but like everybody in this house, nobody listens to me. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're going to be using watercolors again. I've got my 2 jars of water, which is funny because I almost always just use only one. But maybe one day, since I have 2 available, I'll use 2. I've got a palette with some colors already activated, and then I have my actual full palette over here on the side too, in case I need to draw from that. So today, today we're gonna do something that's, I'm gonna say, is a little bit challenging, maybe. At least it has been for me. Maybe you guys are absolute pros and it won't be challenging for you at all. So I had a viewer that approached me and asked if I could do something specific for Fodder Friday, and that would be weenie dogs. Okay, so let's just clear the air for a second. I don't do anything realistic, right? I lean on the side of whimsy, so I had to make that very clear from the get-go. If you're looking for a real weenie dog, you've come knocking on the wrong door, because that's not going to happen. So I set about to explore weenie dogs, and I come up with a version that I'm mostly fine with. There's always room for improvement, but here we go. We have little weenie dogs. You don't have to make them, bright colors. You could make them normal, whatever normal is, but weenie dog colors. I just happen to use these colors this time. And I have a couple that I haven't cut out yet. It's got this guy, gal, whatever. And then this one. So we're just gonna make a couple because they have a few, few details that are kind of persnickety that we need to go over. So I've got my watercolor paper, and now that I've set this out, I think I'm just going to use these 2 random scrap pieces that I had, just because I know that I'm going to cut them anyway. So I'm using an 8 round. You can use whatever size you'd like. I found that this one works somewhat well for me. So, like we've said before, you're gonna want like kind of syrup consistency. And I've got a couple colors on here ready to go. I've got this like magenta color, and I've got a purple and like a turquoise. We're just gonna use those because that's what I have set up. I live in the desert, so I have come to learn that when I paint watercolors, things dry very quickly. And with watercolor, if you want to manipulate it, it always has to be in a somewhat damp stage. So that means that I had to practice a bajillion weenies. And of course, they still have room for improvement, but I'll kind of just talk it through as I go, and hope for the best. Okay, so I have found that I like to start with a very fine point on my brush. So you can get that just kind of by twisting your brush. Can you see that? In the palette. And it will kind of bring you to a sharp point on your brush. If you have a brand new brush, you know, your point will snap back pretty well, but I think I've used this one so much that I have to coax it a little bit. So you're kind of gonna, I'm just gonna show it without painting first. How am I gonna do that? I don't know. Does that even make sense? I don't know that either. But you're gonna kind of start at a point and then come up and swoop down, and you'll see it as I go. But the biggest thing is keeping this whole area damp. And for me, that doesn't always happen. So I'll just talk you through it as I go. So I'm going to kind of start with a point. I'm going to come up and I'm going to round and I'm going to come around. And here I have to dip back in for more paint. I'm going to bring this around, come in like that. Kind of looks like a seal, a duck. I don't know. It doesn't look like a weenie dog to me right now. But what I'm going to say is that this edge around here has already dried. Like this is almost all dry. And so I'm going to just continue to let that dry completely. And I'm actually going to go over all of it again with my wet paintbrush. And the reason I do that is because if I were just to paint within the lines, there would be a differing color because the wet paint would end up being a little bit darker than your outline. And if you're fine with that, then go with it. So you're basically just giving it another whole thing, whole coat, can't even talk. And then the next part that I do, because the back end is still going to be a little bit wet, is I come in with the tail. So kind of start with your point and wrap it around. Almost like when we did the leaves, start point, belly, point. It's almost like a very just narrow leaf, honestly. And then we can come in and do the legs next. And they can be really any shape you want them to be. I mean, obviously like kind of rectangular, maybe what you gravitate towards, but like this one, they're kind of triangular. There's no right or wrong. You do it however you want to do it. So I'm going to come in, just make a couple little legs. And if you feel like this is too wet, you see how this is pooling a little bit. I'm just going to come over to my cloth or paper towel or whatever, dry off my brush, and then I'm going to pick up some of that paint with a dry brush. Nothing bad will happen if you let it pool. It will just take a little bit longer to dry. And maybe we'll have, you see how this has like a separation of color there? That might happen, but quite honestly, not a big deal. Right? Like, we're going to be the only ones who notice it. Nobody else will even notice. And you can put the legs really kind of wherever you want, I think. There's no rules, right? Okay, so this body is all dry now with the exception of the legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and make like maybe some spots. I'm just going to come in with pink again, but it's going to show up a little bit darker because it's going on top of a color that's already dry. And this is nice, especially if for some reason you have some imperfections. They're not really imperfections in my opinion, but I can show you. Like, do you see how this has like a bloom right here? That's what it's called when it does like that kind of like cauliflower looking thing. If you don't like that, then just cover it up with what you think would be like a spot on a dog. And then you never even know it was there. And maybe I'll do another one here on her hiney. Okay, so those are still wet, clearly. Now, you could have done those in a different color if you wanted. You could have come in with a completely separate color. I'm just kind of sticking to this for ease of explanation. So, once the head is completely dry, and you want to make sure that that's the case, don't try to do this part if the head isn't dry, because you're going to have your color that's going to bloom, and you won't get a good shape, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because we're going to be coming in now to make the ear. And if you have this part is wet where you're attaching the ear, you won't get a defined shape. It will just merge right into the rest of your weenie. Oh boy. Okay, so we're going to start up here at the top, and we're just going to come down and kind of make like a teardrop shape. Like that. And if you wanted to do it, you know, wider at the bottom even, you could. I just chose not to do that for this one because this spot is still wet. And I knew that it would all just merge together. If you wanted to dry it first and then do the ear, totally could do that. So those things are still a little bit wet, but that's okay for right now. I'm going to come in with my Posca pen, geez, black. And I'm going to give her a little nose. And I'm also going to give her an eye with a couple of eyelashes because I can if I want. And then when that's completely dry, meaning the ear is completely dry, I could use the dryer, but I'll just go on to the next one. Then we'll come in and give her a collar. If we don't wait until the ear dries and we butt up against there, then whatever color that you've chosen for the collar is going to bleed into her ear. And if you're good with that, work it. There's nothing to say that that's wrong. I'm just trying to give you options on how you can do it. Okay, let's do this next one, and how about we do purple? So we're going to make the body just like we did. Get your point on. And the only reason I do that is because I like there to be a little point where I'm going to put the nose. But, you know, if you don't get an exact point, it's totally fine. You can just, you know, fix that when you go in with your Posca pen and just kind of manipulate it to how you need it to be. So we're going to start with our point. We're going to come up. We're going to go around. Oh, look at that. That's not great. That's okay. And remember, I'm going back over the outline. So that it ends up being the same color. And even then, you know what? When we come in and use our, you know, black sketch pen to like outline everything, it's all going to be fine. So I want the hiney to be a little bit damp so that when I add the tail, it doesn't just look like a separate piece of something. And I can blend the color in. I can carry that dark right up to the tip of the tail. So this part is still wet. As you can see, this is almost dry already. That's literally how fast it dries here in the desert. Watercolor can be quite challenging when it's very dry. So if you have a, you know, where you are, it's like more humid, you might have more time. You're just gonna have to play around and see. I'm gonna put some legs. And then since this is completely dry, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do the ear. And I'm just gonna do it in a dark purple. So start up at the top, come down, and you can make it as long or as short as you want. You could make it shorter and maybe put like a little ruffle on it. That would be okay. And then I think I'll come in and maybe do a couple of spots. And again, you don't have to do the spots. You could leave it completely a solid color. I just think the spots are fun. And since I like to do most things in threes, or, you know, odd numbers, that's what I tend to gravitate towards on this too. And if you wanted to come back in and say make the tail darker, just do another layer of the purple. In fact, we can do that so you can see. And then she just has a darker tail. Okay, so I'm just gonna put the nose in the eye because all these spots and stuff are still wet. And you could do the eye, you could just do it a round dot. You could do it how I did the last one where it's like a half moon. Whatever you like. So there she is. And I'm gonna set her over here to finish drying, and I'll bring this one back that we worked on. Excuse me. And I'm gonna come in, nope, I'm not gonna do that. What color of collar do we think we want on her? How about green? And you don't have to use paint pens. You could come back in with another layer of watercolor once this is all dry and do it with watercolor. You could do it with acrylic paint, like just out of a tube with a paintbrush if you wanted. You don't have to use this pen. It's just easy for me to grab. So there she has a little green collar on. And I like to give them big surprise, little freckles. And sometimes I like to come over here and do a little bit more dots. Like that. And then when this is all dry, which it is, besides the collar, you come in and just outline the whole thing, just like we did with like the birds and the flowers. And it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, as you know, I like it when it isn't perfect. And then you're basically just giving a little bit of outline. You can decide if you want to do the whole ear or just the like bottom edge. I like to come in and do the whole ear. And there she is. You could do like a couple little lines here for like her toes if you wanted. And of course, sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing into the camera to make sure you're in screen. If you wanted to come in and embellish, you could do that too. There were some, hold please. Let me see if I can find them. When I was early on in my weenie dog construction, I couldn't get to, I finally got to where I liked the shape and everything. So these were early on, and I'm not as pleased with the shape, but I did, you know, like some little swirlies there. You could come in and do little leaves and polka dots, like, you know, add some botanicals. You could just do polka dots. These guys are a completely different shape. They're not, there's nothing wrong with them. It just didn't, like, you know, make my heart sing when I was all done with them. So I kept going. Okay, what color of collar do we want for this one? Red? Let's try red. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I don't really know what I have in store for my weekend. Probably yard work. And then I'm gonna come in and do my outline. You guys want, you know, do you want me to make some like leaves on this one, some botanicals, just so you can see how that would look? Trace the ear. Come in and do the rest of her face. Because I can. Let's do them in, let's do them in green. That might be fun. I keep like going over. Pretty soon I'll be like completely off the screen. So these are, the leaves are quite simple. And I know we haven't done like leaves attached to a stem yet as far as fodder goes. And that's my plan to do that at one point. But I can give you kind of a little preview. So you're just going to make a curvy line. You can curve it however you want. And then you just kind of make little circles on there almost. It doesn't even have to be pointy like a leaf. It just adds, you know, a little bit of whimsy, even more. Right? Like, how cute is that? Come on. How cute is she? All right. Let's cut this one out so you can see how they look when they're cut out. You can cut as close to the line as you want. I'm doing kind of a kiss cut, I guess, so that there's a little bit of white left. But you don't have to. In between the legs can be a little bit challenging. And then you can use these, you know, you could glue this onto a piece of cardstock for like a greeting card. Just gonna cut some of this extra off. You could use her as a focal point in an art journal spread. You could simply send some of these in a card to somebody to brighten their day. It doesn't even have to be attached to anything if you don't want it to. There she is. Should we cut out the purple one too? Let's do it. I didn't add toes on this one, and that's okay. You don't have to. Maybe you don't like the toes on there. And like I said, you could do these in brown, black, you know, more like what you might actually see in real life. But, I mean, although if you saw a purple weenie dog, that would be kind of cool. So, we're still just plugging along over here. Husband is applying for a bajillion jobs. Still trying to find one. I did not get the job at Barnes & Noble, sadly. It was between me and one other person, and they went with the other person. Story of my life. So, as it turns out, right now, I went back to my previous employer, where I used to work several years ago. It's like a produce subscription box, kind of like a CSA, but not exactly like that. So I'm working part-time for her for a little bit. I was very thankful that she needed somebody in the barn, and that I could start right away. That's going to be very helpful since we don't have Sean's income coming in. You could also come in on top of these little green leaves if you wanted, and kind of make little like black lines. You don't have to do that. In fact, you might not like that, but you could do it. I did it if you want to. So there we have it. Little weenie dogs. Hopefully those were what the viewer had in mind. I'm not sure she had anything in mind, quite honestly, but hopefully those are satisfactory. I'll be anxious to hear. And if you guys want to try them, let me know, because I would love to know that you guys tried the little wiener dogs, and they're just very sweet. I think they're just very sweet little wiener dogs. So, hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.